recognized symbol of excellence for your entertainment.
Welcome to Machino Music, the show that puts the music in Machino Music, with your host, me, Brett Strong. Today on Machino Music, it's the big fours of all genres. 1, 2, 3, 4. Big fours. Okay, here we go. The big fours of all genres. Now, you know me, I love all kinds of music. Still, I'm sticking mainly to the music we talk about the most here. I was going to expand this idea into maybe like hip hop and stuff like that, but I'm not. I enjoy a lot of hip hop, but I'm not like a real connoisseur of hip hop to really, be the guy to say, hey, these are the big fours. Of course, the big four concept comes from the big four of thrash metal: Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, and Slayer. Did that big concert where they all came together sometime in the mid to late 2000s. They did that big concert tour. But it's kind of been the sort of the debate, the talk of a lot of these music channels, some goof like me talking about music. Who are the big fours of other styles of mostly heavy metal? Like they've all done glam metal, whatever. But I thought, let's expand this out. Like, who would be maybe the big fours of other genres of rock music? So I just sort of compiled a few big fours that I kind of thought, these would be cool to kind of look at who might be the big four of this. So first one I'm going to start with is glam metal. This is who I think should be considered the big four of glam metal. Motley Crue. Pretty well started the whole thing. How about Quiet Riot? First heavy metal band to have a #1 on the Billboard charts. So they kind of had to be in there. Poison and Cinderella. I think those would be the big four. Even though Cinderella kind of, some would say they're not really a glam metal band. They're not even from Los Angeles. Didn't really break out there. But they just kind of fit in there. I think they just kind of fit more than other bands. So, I just thought Cinderella kind of fit that whole thing. So they're my big four of glam metal. Now let's move into some other areas of heavy metal. How about the new wave of British heavy metal? Who would be those new wave of British heavy metal big four bands? Well, of course, Iron Maiden. Of course, Judas Priest. And there's your big two right there. Motorhead have to be as a new wave of British heavy metal. They got to be in that conversation. And rounding it out, filling it out, Saxon. So here you go. I think that's the big four of the new wave of British heavy metal. How about just your pure metal pioneers? The people the bands that really blew it up. That just made this like, okay, here's this thing we're calling heavy metal. Who are those pioneers? Of course, Black Sabbath. Of course, Led Zeppelin. Call them a metal band or not, they really started heavy metal. They're one of those bands people look at like, okay, that's a heavy metal band. It may not be really heavy metal, but the look. Robert Plant. So Led Zeppelin has to be in there. Of course, Deep Purple. I mean, Smoke on the Water, that riff, that's up there with Iron Man. As one of the first riffs you learn on guitar when you're, getting into heavy metal. And this one, the last one I thought was a bit difficult. I almost put Kiss, because Kiss, inspired so many bands and also the look. But really, even Kiss, it all comes back to Alice Cooper. So I put Alice Cooper in my top 4 heavy metal pioneers. He did everything first. So he has to be in the conversation. So many people took from Alice Cooper. And he was one of, they didn't really know what to call Alice Cooper early on, so they just called him heavy metal. Even though he really started to do the more heavy metal much later, like more into the 80s, but you could call some of those early Alice Cooper songs heavy metal. So that's who I'm putting in my big 4 heavy metal pioneers. Now let's get into some other genres. How about punk? Who would be the big 4 of punk? I'm going to go the Ramones, of course, the Clash, of course, Sex Pistols, and how about Black Flag? There you go. That'd be the big 4 of punk for me. How about offshoot of punk? New Wave. Gotta have Devo. Gotta have Blondie. Gotta have the Talking Heads. And why not? Let's put on Television. Now I was going to put Television as a, big 4 of punk. But, they kind of were more like new wave and kind of inspired more new wave, consider more new wave. You listen to them now. They're essentially a punk band, but let's put them in with the new wave big 4. I think they fit in well there. How about 80s pop? 80s pop. Lot that you could put in 80s pop. Gotta have Michael Jackson. Gotta have Madonna. That was a big spit I just did right there. Gotta have Prince. And that's your big 3. But who's your 4? How about Cyndi Lauper? Kind of underrated. Most people kind of forget about Cyndi Lauper. Kind of got overshadowed by Madonna. But she's currently out on her farewell tour. I think for her it's going to finally be farewell. I mean, she's going to be I'm going to come back like 2 years later and let's do it all over again. I think she's done. But you just really see the response to it and everything, oh man. She was phenomenal, Cyndi Lauper. Love Cyndi Lauper, big fan of hers.
Who is this girl, Cyndi Lauper, and why is she so unusual?
She has to be in there. And you forget how massive she was. So she fits in there with the big 4 of 80s pop. All right, back into rock here. How about progressive rock? Prog. Should do more shows about prog on here. I don't do enough prog shows. But who would be the big 4 of prog? This is who I would pick. Pink Floyd. Gotta be in there. How about Genesis? Yes, Genesis. So great. Gotta have Rush. I mean, I'm Canadian. I mean, if you don't have Rush and you're Canadian, it's a crime. You're thrown in jail in Canada for just not even mentioning Rush. If you don't like Rush, you get thrown in jail in Canada. That's a law. Closing it out, number 4, Yes. Yes, yes. You gotta have Yes. Rick Wakeman. Love Rick Wakeman. So great. How about the British Invasion? Gotta have the British Invasion. Big music movement. So many huge bands. So influential. So many bands wanted to be these British Invasion bands. Who would be the big 4 of the British Invasion? I would say the Beatles. Of course, the Beatles. The Rolling Stones. Gotta be in there. I mean, those are your most influential, Beatles and Rolling Stones. Gotta have the Who. Of course, the Who. Roger Daltrey's still going strong. Saw him in concert. Fantastic. The closest I'm ever going to come to actually seeing the Who. So, yeah. Great. Gotta have the Who. And number 4, how about the Kinks? People kind of forget about the Kinks. Some would say the first heavy metal band. Some would say the first punk band. they're just hard to categorize. Maybe why they didn't get so huge is they maybe are a little too British. If you listen to their songs, they just don't kind of get like a lot of slang words and kind of things that maybe doesn't quite translate to American audiences. But still, the Kinks were a great band, really underrated, really groundbreaking. So yeah, I think those would be your big four of British invasion. All right, my last big four grouping. Last genre I'm going to talk about here. How about girl groups? Gotta talk about the girl groups. It was a big deal. Starting back in the Motown years. Then became big again in the 90s. Actually, it was mainly boy bands people associate with the 90s, but hell with the boy bands, how about the girl groups? There's some girl groups coming back too. But who would be the big four of girl groups? Thought you gotta have the Supremes. Kind of started it all. Diana Ross, the legendary, great Diana Ross. Yeah, that's got to be in there. The Bangles. Got to have the Bangles. People forget how influential the Bangles were. The Go-Go's. Got to have the Go-Go's. You got the Bangles, you got to have the Go-Go's. Go-Go's were fantastic. And closing it out pretty well, the last major girl group, of course, Spice Girls. Got to have the Spice Girls as your big four girl groups because they were massive. And people are looking back and think, wow, how great were the Spice Girls? And of course, I'm a big fan. I got their big poster right there behind me. So, there you go. Those are, for me, the big fours of all genres, at least chosen genres, the ones that I could actually kind of construct sort of these big fours, these sort of Mount Rushmores of these big artists and these big genres of music. If you have a different big four, I'm sure you do, let's hear about it, because this is sort of an interesting concept here that I just kind of just threw together. Just trying to think, what genres are like really big? Who can you make an argument for a big four? Who could you open up conversation about? So this is really cool. I had a lot of fun doing this. So if you're a fan of any of these bands, you're a fan of any of these genres, and if you have your own ideas of who your big fours are, I hope you enjoyed this. That's it for this week. Until we meet again, this is Brett Strong saying good journey. Okay.
Meow,